that is not counting any of my sweat equity time, project management, anything. All that stuff is for free, right?
Yeah.
So if I counted that at like an hourly rate that was like reasonable, I'd be over on that building 100%.
Right.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik. With me, as always, John Cohen. How you doing?
We got a light day. We had nothing to do, but we postponed the podcast to today because we sold a deal, we refinanced a deal, we closed on a deal. We're financing two more deals, and we're closing on one deal. But today, it seems to be autopilot. So it's I'm getting out of here early. I'm going to hang out with my daughter and my wife.
Oh, there you go.
And I say that. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm sure something.
Call it noon and shit'll go sideways.
Yeah, I'm sure something will go bad. But no, all intentions is to get out of here early and take a easy Friday.
Yeah. So to all our investors, John Cohen, hard worker on a Friday.
I'm out.
Awesome. Got a really good guest on today. He's got a really interesting backstory, doing a lot of good stuff, very hands-on in his multifamily stuff, in his rentals, in his real estate stuff. Been doing it for a while. Family stuff as well, so it'll be really interesting to hear his story, pick his brain, see how he's doing stuff. But I'll let him give the whole backstory. So, Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing? All right, so backstory for me, I was kind of on a pre-med track after college. I was going to get my master's degree in biomedical science.
When was this?
And this is back in 2008. So, right when the market started to turn. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in grad school and decided that I really was not in, the medical, on that medical track because I wanted to be a doctor. I was kind of on that track because I wanted to make money, and I thought that was the path to do that. So I kind of, made a hard right turn and decided I wanted to buy an apartment building. And, I was 23, 24. No credit, wasn't bad credit, just didn't have anything. I had like a $2,000 student credit card from Bank of America. And I went and I put an 8-unit under contract. Couldn't close. I couldn't get the financing. And I had a broker introduce me to Hard Money at that time, mortgage broker. And I ended up jumping in with my brother, who's younger than me. He was 21 at the time. And we purchased a 31-unit building.
Oh, wow. In
the hood for $600,000 with a Hard Money loan.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, my father was a custom home builder for, 25 years. He had a home inspection business. So I've kind of always been around real estate. He never owned any rental real estate per se. He was in the process of doing a couple ground up apartment communities when, the crash happened. And those all got tied up. So, never really had.
Was he doing them for himself, or was he doing it as like a fee builder?
So he was a partner he was the building partner, basically.
Gotcha.
No equity, to the table, but he came and he brought, the sweat equity, basically. But, never really, I was never really around, rental real estate, growing up. But I always had, a taste of it, a taste of real estate in general, construction, renovation work, that kind of stuff. So we picked up this building and 31 units, and it was a wreck. It was, half empty. The half that was occupied, you didn't want them. And, just not in good shape. 30 years of deferred maintenance. So for a good year, we were there daily, doing the maintenance and repairs ourselves, essentially.
Right.
Soldering in a basement with an iPhone, learning how to do it as we do it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And
so
and
just real quick, was that,
yeah.
Did you have a job or going to school at the same time, or this was just what you did all day,
right.
every day?
So I graduated college. I went to Boston College. I graduated. I went and I enrolled in a master's program to get my master's in biomedical science in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a feeder to the medical school. So the same medical school had this graduate program that you basically go through, and basically I think every single kid that I went to that grad program with ended up going to that medical school.
Right.
I didn't have a job. I had started a couple small businesses in college, custom beer pong ball business actually. And that was giving me some pocket change. I ended up selling it for a nominal fee. But yeah, I didn't have any other job. So I was coming, I thought, 31 units, I didn't know better. I thought I was going to be rich. I thought I was going to be the man, and bought the building, and there I'm slaving away, in a basement or an apartment every day, 6 days a week, 12-hour days, whatever.
Yeah.
Cause I couldn't afford to pay anybody to do the work for me.
For sure.
So we finally got to a point where we had it stabilized. It was fully occupied. It was throwing off some money. And I saw this 12% interest loan. And it was, it was sucking up all the cash flow. So I was trying to refi out, but nobody wanted to give me the loan. This is 2010 at the time.
Right.
So I ended up getting introduced to an investor through my mortgage broker, who is 15, 20 years older than me, and had a couple thousand apartments, and said, "Look, man, I like you're scrappy, you're a go-getter, you're trying to make things happen. Because how about I come in, I'll have my bank refi you out, you'll get all your money back plus probably about $100,000, and we go 50-50. You send me 3 G's a month out of the cash flow, and that's all you got to send me. If you increase rents over time, you just send me the 3. That's it." So I said, "Yeah, sounds good." So we refinanced that. Around that same time, there were a couple other buildings that were in the area. Like I caught a 15-unit building like a block away off a Craigslist ad.
And where is this, by the way? I don't think you said.
Yeah. I mean, Northeast Pennsylvania. So it's Allentown, Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley. Yeah. So at that time, I bought like a 15-unit building. It was on Craigslist, and I ended up getting into that deal for like, I think the bank financed 100%. I negotiated 3% interest only for the first like 5 years or 3 years at the time. And then it was going to go to 4.5. And I did that with like 2 buildings where banks just, they didn't know what to do with them. Nobody was buying anything. I maintained their principal, but I just negotiated a much lower rate to kind of offset my risk, basically.
So were they bank owned at the time?
They were both bank owned, yeah, both those businesses. So that was like another 25 units I picked up there, and I ended up bringing the guy that came in to partner with me on my first deal. I brought him a larger portfolio of 10 buildings, like 170 something units, all located in the same city, so all in Allentown as well. And it was the same deal. It was 50% occupied. It was in rough shape, tons of CapEx needed. And he came in and we financed that deal 50-50. His bank financed the whole thing because the value was the purchase price was so low compared to what the value was, that we were able to get in with no out-of-pocket money. And the next thing you know, I had 200 and something units, and I was managing them all, which with no experience essentially. So kind of learned on the fly, and that's kind of how we started. And right now we have probably just over 400 units, bought some, sold some, throughout the time. And we were vertically integrated. I have about 18 guys that work for me full time. They do all the maintenance, renovation, and all that work. and we self-manage as well. So we do all the property management as well. So we're all located within the same city. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now.
That's awesome. I think there's a lot of great stuff we can kind of unpack and dig in, but I appreciate you going in depth with that. I think first, have you continued to work with the same individual, or have you gone off on your own now and most of the stuff is yourself? Or
yeah, so those are the only two buildings that I have had with him. I'm in the process now. We're working on doing some refinances and buyouts on those properties.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful, obviously, for everything that came of our relationship. And I just I think it's time for us to just keep moving and going in different ways. I mean, I know that he's been buying a lot larger projects, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think it makes a ton of sense. I mean, we talk about it all the time. If we had $200 million, we wouldn't have investors. It's
sure.
You don't want to answer to anybody if you
Right.
don't have to. And as nice as it is that we can have investors and allow people to invest alongside with us and in projects that they may not otherwise be able to do, there's also other people they could go do it with. So if we didn't have to do it, it would just make life significantly easier. So there's nothing wrong at all, in my opinion, at least, for one to do that. And I'm sure, if he's such a small portion now and he's doing his own stuff, it probably makes sense for everybody.
Yeah, he's on a different level than me for sure.
Yeah. So can you unpack a little bit what it was like for you diving in with no idea in that process? Because I think that's a big part for a lot of people, where it's like, I read a book and I want to get started, and some people just dive in headfirst. Like you,
Sure.
John's definitely that way. I'm less that way. I'm less confident of just diving in with both feet and figuring it out. I'll do it to a certain degree, but I'm less so. So can you talk through a little bit of that process, and then, how you kind of figured it out?
I mean, I think it has to do with how you were brought up. I mean, my father had a high risk tolerance always. And, I've kind of always been raised to think, look, there's nothing you can't do. You can figure it out. If this guy can do it, you can do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's got to be a way. So you just need to figure out what that path is. So my risk tolerance, I think since forever, has always been super, super high. That's not the same for everybody, obviously. So, I think what might be good for me is definitely not going to be good for somebody else, depending 100%. On their personality. So I'm not going to advise somebody to go and just, quit their job and just jump into a 31 unit building that's half empty with a 12% interest loan. Like, not a good idea, probably for most people. But for me, I think that, when I get something in my head that I want to do it, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to figure out how to do it, or I'm going to crap out, one or the other.
I mean, it seems like I'm looking in the mirror, right? Because I'm the same way.
Where's your 400 units?
Yeah, right. I'm stubborn as shit. So if someone says I can't do something, I'm like, no. There's the extra motivation I needed, and whether I fail miserably or not, I could not agree with that more. I just feel like, but like you said, there's different risk tolerances for individuals. Let's dive in head first. It's 2 feet deep. That was probably a bad idea, but you give it a shot, because if someone else is doing it, it can be done. You just got to figure out the right path to get there, and it might be a little bumpy on the way, but there's nothing better when you get to the other side, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. For sure. So what was it like once you kind of got past those first couple where you're figuring out, what was kind of the thought process behind it? Was like, I want to scale and own everything? This is just what I know to do, and I just want to continue to do it? Like, what was like the motivation, the thought process behind everything as you continue to buy more, scale and stuff like that?
So I think that initially it's like, I want to own 10,000 units. I want to do this. I want to do that. For me, it's changed over time. I'd rather have, 800 units, 50% leverage, throwing off tons of cash flow that's stable and safe and good versus just scaling up as quickly as possible. I think there's a lot of danger in that. I think that, for me at least too, also, I learned management, basically the whole business by doing it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that I don't know still, obviously, and then I'm still fine tuning and making better. And, I look at my portfolio and it's like, okay, so say you have 400 units, you can increase your cash flow by, I don't know, call it $5,000 a month by buying a new building. Or are there ways to do it within your own 400 units you have now?
Yeah.
Increase that cash flow by across 400 units. And what is that? It's increasing the rents by $10, $12,
mm-hmm.
right? You know what I mean? So I think that more is not necessarily better always. I'd like at some point to get to maybe, 1,000 units, 1,500 units at some point. But before I do that, I'm fully aware that I need to really, really lock down my procedures, how things are ran, how they're managed, and have nice cash cushions in all my operating accounts. Because over the years, I've kind of scaled very, very quickly, mm-hmm. at least, for me, doing it with my own cash, that, I don't always leave a ton of cash liquid, as a cushion in all these operating accounts. Right. So,
right.
I'm not raising money. So, I use, let's say, house flips or, small multifamily flips to fund my future acquisitions. And I don't have another side gig. So this is my income. So in addition, it has to pay my salary, my brother, all that stuff as well. And, we've had really good deals fall across our desks and have a hard time saying no sometimes, and end up raiding some of the accounts to get, distributions out to buy them. And, we've leaned away from that in the last couple of years to try to build a more stable foundation. So that's my main focus right now. So, yeah.
But that's the flexibility of not having investors, right? If it's your own money, I say it all the time, there is something to be said about, like, I'm doing the same thing on a personal level. It's okay. Here's money I'm putting in this account. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to leave it for a rainy day. And normally, historically, it's like, well, I got extra money there. I'm going to go take a shot on this. But now family and kids and a house, it's like, let's leave that there for that. But the benefit of not having investors, and one of the best things in the world, like you said, you know what, this is really for this building, but I'm not going to pass on that opportunity. And having that flexibility and not having to answer anybody, you're not breaking any laws. It's your own money. You're allowed to do whatever you want with it. Yes, the prudent thing might be, let's leave it there for a rainy day if we have to replace a roof. But this is a really good flip. We're not going to pass on it. So you make the conscious decision, which, inevitably with time and education and experience, you say, you know what, I could pass on this one. It's not the end of the world. Let's let this do its thing. And I think that, that's something that people need to understand when they're getting into this, because everybody's like, I want to go buy a 250 unit in a syndication and raise $10 million. But that flexibility is not there. Your accounts are basically locked. Once you put the money in.
Or they should be.
Yeah, or they should be. You cannot start doing that. Like, oh, there's a really good opportunity. Let's use it as a deposit. Like, that's just so wrong and bad under so many circumstances.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's horrible. But that's the side that, I think people get into it. They're like, oh, real estate cash flow income, but that's not the way it goes. Unless it's your own deal, you got to go to bed at night. You have to answer to yourself. So if the money's not there and you don't have another job, you got to figure it out another way. But that's something that, that's got to be weighed pros and cons when you're getting into either, whether it's a single family flip or a syndication or a commercial building, you got to put that on the list. It's a pro or a con. A pro is, I have the flexibility. A con is, well, you know what? I really don't have a backstop, but you can figure that out. So I think it's important to know that.
Yeah. I'm curious too, because when I heard you talking, I had two thoughts running simultaneously through my mind, and they kind of go parallel. I bet there's a lot of people right now that are listening going, wow, this guy's probably living the life right now with 400 units, making tons of money. But when I heard you talking, and especially as you got to the end, I'm thinking, wow, he's doing it so smart, because he's taking every single dollar from everything he's doing and he's reinvesting it. Can you talk a little bit about what your life has been like the past 10 years as you've built this?
Yep.
Because I want people to understand that the reason I wanted to have you on is because, one, you've done this on your own. I don't think there's a lot of people that are willing to sit down and talk about how they've built this up themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think people will have a skewed vision of who you are and what your life has been like, because on paper, 400 units myself and generating 5,000 extra in cash flow a month, people are probably sitting there going, oh my God, like that's incredible. So just a little bit of like, I'm sure the sacrifices and everything you've had to do over the last 10 years to get to where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, something that's kind of crazy that, that you guys would probably be surprised to know is that, so I got married in, last year in July.
Awesome.
And, that's not the crazy thing. The crazy thing is that I still live with my parents.
That's phenomenal. I absolutely love that, because I got married, now it's going on to 3 years. This will be, and my wife was, she was on me, let's get engaged. I still live with my parents. What am I supposed to do? Now, hindsight, I bought a house. I hate it. I wish I rented an apartment. And scratch that. My brother who moved out, I was like, stay with mom and dad. Are you crazy? Like, that's the best thing in the world. I'm not pending, some parents are going to charge rent, so on and so forth. But I commend you for being married and living with your parents. Whether they're charging you or not, you're probably saving so much money that people don't even understand.
Yeah. So I live with my parents, with my wife's with me, living in my, with my parents as well. My brother also living with my parents, with his wife. He's been married for 3 years now. They're now just building a house to move out. And I'm going to end up moving. I'm doing a small project down in Jersey by the beach. It's a 4 residential units above a storefront. I'll move into one of those units and live there for free once it's finished in a couple months. So you look at that, I'm 34 now. You look at that for 10 years where I would have been paying $2,000 a month in rent, in our area. Right. So you're talking about an extra $250,000, $300,000 over that period of time that I didn't spend anywhere else except for my business. I don't pay myself a lot of money. I only pay myself, $1,500 a week. That's what I pay. That's it. But I don't have expenses. So, everything else just gets rolled up into the business.
I don't think people talk about that enough. I don't think people are honest with themselves enough to admit it and or talk about it, because I think people think it's like, it's an embarrassment, right? Like, I personally tell people, stay home as long as you can. Why pay for it if you don't have to? Now, mom and dad are throwing you out, or you don't have a good relationship. I get it.
You don't have exactly. If you don't have a good relationship, they're on your ass. They're busting your chops all the time. Look, I fully understand. But if you have a good relationship, you're living as adults in the same house. Nobody's busting each other's, chops and, giving each other a problem. I don't see the problem.
I used to joke around with my friends when they wanted to move out. They're like, you should move out. I was like, my mom cooks dinner for me every night. She makes my bed. She does my wash I could wear the same outfit every single day. She does the wash every single day. She cooks, cleans. Are you guys going to start doing that for me? And you want me to pay $1,000 a month? Like, that doesn't make fucking sense.
Yeah. So is your mom going to get a phone call as soon as we get out of this?
Yeah, probably.
And your wife?
And now my wife does it for me. So it's, it's great. It's fantastic. But like you said, if you don't have a good relationship, I get it. If there's a problem, I get it. But if you're an adult and you can deal with it, I think that right there will put $30,000 in your pocket a year, just living at home, just not having expenses. Now, if you want to contribute to the thing, buy food and groceries, I get it. But I don't think people utilize that tool of their parents enough. I really don't. I think that people, I want to live out. I want to live in Manhattan. I want to live on my own. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't come crying back to me when, you have student debt, you can't do this and you can't do that, because you probably could have figured out another way. But
no, I think
it's awesome.
It's really important to talk about, because it's just leveraging whatever resources you have.
Yes.
And if you have greater resources than someone else, or you have less than someone else, like, okay, like, what are you going to do about it? Right. If somebody is listening and you don't have the resource of staying with your parents, I'm sorry, but tough shit.
Yeah.
Like, you can't change it. There's only certain things you can do. Right. Like, I'm sure there's someone that was exactly in Joe's position, but they had parents who gifted them $5 million or $1 million, and they went out and they could have bought 1,200 units, but you don't sit there and complain about things you don't have. You maximize what you do have. And then I also think it's interesting too, where it's like having that self-awareness to understand what you want to do. I didn't want to live at home, but I'm not sitting here complaining that I don't have 400 units or 200 units to myself. It's fine however you want to do it, but I think you've got to have the self-awareness and the understanding of, if I do one thing, I can't then have the other thing without
you can't have your cake and eat it too.
For it. Yeah, exactly.
You have your cake and eat it too. So I've been on a big accountability rip rate lately because nobody wants to be accountable for what they do. You send an email on January 15th to somebody, they say they never got it and it didn't matter, and a month later, 2 months later, but it's everything. And I've been on a whole accountability, and you're right. If you choose this path, don't complain to me because you don't have this. If you make your bed, right? You cook your turkey and you have to eat it. That's the decisions in life. It's your consequences for your actions. Joe, which, I commend him, he made that decision, and be it smart or not, it's for anyone else to judge. That's a decision that he made, which I think people don't. Nobody wants to hold themselves accountable for anything. Everybody wants to point blame at somebody else, and nobody wants to wake up and look at them.
I'll take it a step further. So I try to make it a point to be accountable for everything that everybody else does.
Yeah.
So if one of my guys screws up and does something, that he shouldn't have done, or does something wrong, whatever, that's my fault. And I'll say it to them directly. I go, this is my fault because I wasn't on top of you. I didn't check you out. I didn't explain it enough. So I go a step further to make everybody else's issues, if they're within my organization, that's all on me.
Yeah. I can resonate with that. It's if you work for somebody and if you do something wrong, that's totally different. But if you're not given the right guidance and or there was another set of eyes that could have helped, I would agree. I think it falls on the top, someone at the top saying, listen, it's my fault. I'm sorry. I should have overlooked it. I should have helped you. I should have given you more research, whatever it is. But people don't most people don't have that. Most people want, they're the first one to point the finger at someone else. Oh, it's his problem. That's why I didn't get done. That's not going to solve anything.
Anything in the world.
Yeah.
I hate it so much.
No, it's awesome. And I'm really curious too, as you've been living at home and doing this stuff, and I don't know how much you told people what you were doing. Did you ever get people like questioning you, like why you're living at home, why you're not making more, why I get the feeling you're not driving a fancy car or anything like that? No. Did you ever get any sort of backlash from people, or not really?
No, not really. I mean, I have the same group of guy friends that I've had since we were, 12 years old. Maybe they'll bust my chops every once in a while, but I think that, I think at the end of the day, everyone knows what I do for a living. So there's really not much to say.
What about early on when it was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to live at home, and because I especially in like the 23 to 25, 26 range, I think there's a big want in our country, society, culture, whatever you want to call it, to be like, all right, I graduated school at 21, 22, and then now I'm going to enter the workforce, and I want to get to the biggest salary as quick as I can and live that life. So is there any sort of thing like that where it's like, oh, Joe's in a 31 unit shithole ghetto building every day, working 12 hours, 6 days a week. What the fuck is he doing? Was that ever like, did you ever get that?
Yeah, my friends really didn't bust my chops about that in a serious way. I don't think. A lot of my friends from growing up, I mean, it's a group of like, say, 12 or 13 guys. And I'd say out of that, maybe 60% of them own their own businesses.
Gotcha.
So we kind of were all going through, that at the same time, where we were kind of building up our businesses, learning how to do this, do that, how to operate. And if anything, I think that we kind of learned from one another during that process, rather than kind of really busting each other's balls about it.
That's awesome. I think having that support system is so important, because I've definitely found personally there's a lot of people that are not as understanding of what I do and how I do stuff as I've gotten a little bit older, and as people kind of go their own way. And a lot of people just want that steady job, want the family and all that stuff. And, I don't care what people want to do with their life, but there's definitely a lot of people I know from the outside looking in, who obviously don't have the same perspective of what I'm doing every day, they don't necessarily understand how it works or what I'm doing and stuff like that. So the fact that you had that support, you know, I'm sure your family obviously was big in it if you all live together and doing the same thing, but to even have those, you know, 6 to 12 friends that are all going through the same stuff to lean on and support and like do everything, I think is awesome, because building your own business, I'm sure, is kind of lonely as shit. You know, if you're,
well, I'm fortunate enough to be doing it with my brother, and you know, my father's involved too. So like, you know, my brother and I are like as close as two people can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, not super lonely for me to do it, because I've always he's always had my back on it.
Right.
Yeah, my father as well. So, but I think this business in general is a lonely, kind of lone wolf kind of business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like, you know, you graduated and, you know, 12 of your, you know, friends from college are all, you know, real estate developers or, you know, apartment owners and landlords or syndicators or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, there's a small group of people that do this kind of stuff, especially do it on, like, you know, you guys are on a big scale for syndications. I mean, you know, how many peers do you guys really, you know, fraternize with on a regular basis? I mean, none of your friends, you know, your actual friends from home or anything like that do what you do, I would assume, right?
No, it's just, so I was going to say, I agree. No, none of my, you know, most of my friends still think I said, they're like, oh, you sell any buildings lately? Like, as like a commercial broker. I'm like,
all the time.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, we just sold the property. But like even like I'll go to like family dinners and family like events and Easter and holidays and Christmas. And they're like, you know, how's the real estate business? Like, you buying it, like, you selling any properties or people selling? I'm like, yeah, there's people selling. Like, I don't even, it's not even worth talking about it at this point. But I do think real estate is a solitary, you can network and get out there and be at events.
But it's a lone wolf business.
You're going home and you're putting your head on your pillow, you're next to your wife, or, you know, when I even, you know, throughout my business, like I have a friend who's a lawyer who, you know, he's in the business on the real estate legal side. But other than that, my day-to-day contacts and my day-to-day friends, no, it's like, you know, if I didn't have, you know, 6 people in the office, you know, I'd be talking to nobody. I'd be listening to podcasts by myself. But like, imagine if, you know, you talk to your friends and they're in different industries, but, you know, how many of your, like Joe said, your peers, your real, I'm going out friends do this?
Well, only one Farber is the only one who even like gets it. And it was like in the last year or so, we just kind of connected over it because he's been getting more and more into it. But everybody else, like you said, just family or friends, just trying to explain what it is. It's not even a difficult concept to get. I think it's just a lengthy concept to explain for people to wrap their head around. It's like, if you're at a family party, you don't want to spend 30, 45, 60 minutes trying to explain exactly what you do.
Pitching your uncle on your business.
And that's always the fear too, right? Is like, you don't want to, especially because we raise money, maybe it's a little bit different if it's your own thing, but it's like, I never want to come across as like, hey, I'm explaining this to you so you can give me money so you can invest in the building. Right. Yeah, like I would love to share and explain what I'm doing, but then you always get to the part where you start talking about investors. And I'm always trying to like think of the other person. I don't want to come across as like, hey, I'm going to explain how great this is so you give me 50 grand or 25 grand to invest in a deal or something like that. So it's like, it's always a weird balance of like, I don't want to get into it too much and I don't want to oversell it or like things like that. Which probably isn't as big as a concern because like I just tend to overthink things anyway and be careful. But yeah, I get it 100% where it's like some of my family, it's like my grandma, my Oma's the funny. She's always like, oh, I saw her like 2 weeks ago. She's like, did you sell any buildings since then? I'm like, no, you know, it takes a few months. And it's funny. She actually is starting to understand the process as I've explained it 45 times, but it's actually pretty funny. But yeah, having that support network of even just going through the same thing of building a business, whether it's in real estate or not, I think is super important. That's really why I wanted to ask you, because I was 99% certain exactly what you said is what you were going to say, because I think everybody looks at it as I'm going to build a business and I'm going to drive a Bentley and I'm going to wear 3-piece suits all day and I'm going to live in a penthouse apartment.
Well, that's everything on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got 6 Rolexes, 9 Bentleys, 4 Ferraris. It's no, you don't. You rented that for a video every once in a while, and you live at home with your parents.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing, but people put that persona out, and I'm the opposite, right? I wear a black T-shirt and jeans every day, and I drive a pickup truck. I have no interest in having 10 cars and having an 8,000 square foot house. It's whatever. If it happens, it happens. But you only can drive 1 car a day. I don't, and I don't want to, and I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell that vision, because I think the way you're doing it, that's the way that the real grassroots, that's the way it's done, right? It's not done the whole fancy, that's just a perception, but it's not reality. Perception is, people buy perception because they're jealous or they envy it or they want it. The truth behind it is it actually takes hard work.
Yeah.
And people don't get that.
I do want to say, though, like, if you want 10 cars because you like cars, there's nothing
totally
wrong
different.
with that.
Totally
if
different.
you want 10 cars because you want to host parties and you want to park them all out front as people roll up, different story. You're buying it for the wrong reason. Like, Jay Leno was like 450 cars
He's a
because
collector.
he loves cars, right?
Yeah, I get
There's nothing wrong with that. But it's, you've got to be comfortable owning the 10 cars because you like cars and you want to drive a different one every day, because like I would love to own 3 cars, because there's some days where I'm like, I want a massive truck and I just want to drive around and be in a truck. And then there's some days I'm like, I want to speed around and zip around.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a Maserati and go fast. But, it's because the variety more so than I want to post pictures of my Maserati up on Instagram so everyone thinks I look cool.
Yep.
So I think it's all about knowing who you are and knowing yourself and what you want to accomplish and backing into how that's going to happen. And I think, Joe, your story amplifies that to like the big extreme of, hey, I'm going to do everything I have to do to scale as quickly as I can to get to a place to where now I can stockpile some cash because I want to be a little bit safer. I want to live the life I want to, or I want to build that, 3-unit, 4-unit in Jersey and live there and stuff like that. So I was very happy to hear, that's what it was and stuff like that.
Do you have a deal that, looking back, you shouldn't have done because of the ambition, or, I want to do this on my own. I can afford this one now, but now looking back, it's like, you know what? I should have waited for a better deal.
I have one that I did, and it's not a big deal. It wasn't, in terms of number of units or, square footage, but I bought a building for $1. Okay. It was a 7-unit building that I had to, based on the city, I had to deconvert it to 4 units, 4 massive units. It's 5,000 square foot building.
Oh, wow.
But it was vacant for 20 years. Okay. And the amount of time and effort that building took us to get that thing fully renovated and finished, to have a $400,000 property that we were in for $300,000 and, had $100,000 in equity at the end of the day. I would never do that deal again.
Let me ask a different way to put it. Is it, you wouldn't do it now because it's 5 units of 400, or even if you started at 0, you still wouldn't do that building?
I would not do that building, even if it was the first building I ever had to do. The amount of time, like yes, I'm into it.
That's important.
It's worth 400. That's great.
Yeah.
But that is not counting any of my sweat equity time, right. Project management, anything. All that stuff is for free, right?
Yeah.
So if I counted that at like an hourly rate that was like reasonable, I'd be over on that building 100%.
Right.
I tell people that all the time, because sometimes on paper they look really sexy, and when you put the hours behind the number on paper, it just doesn't make sense, because that those deals are super heavy lifted. There's so many hoops and things you have to jump through. It's like, people listen to like 100,000 in equity. Are you crazy? It would take me 5 years and I do that. That's what everybody says until they're 6 months into it and they want to blow their brains out, because
100%.
And it's funny you picked that deal, because most people probably picked the deal they lose money on or it didn't work. That deal still was profitable, but people, I don't think, I know, and I forgot his name, Chris, right? That the time chart.
Craig,
sorry.
The profitability versus comfortability.
Profitability versus comfortability. People don't weigh what their actual time is worth. nearly enough. No one talks about that component. Everybody, looks at dollars, and dollars are great, but your time is the only resource that is not replaceable. You know what I mean? It's you only have so much of it. And if you're spending it doing something that you hate, or just it's so daunting, that's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, today I listed a property for sale. I bought it January 16th, I think. It's a house flip. Mm-hmm. Bought it for $250 with a fix and flip loan. Just call it $15K in closing costs, $30K in reno. So I'm in under $300, $5,000 in carry costs so far. So $300,000. I listed it today for $400. I spent 3 days there at the property, taking some phone calls, checking out, making sure things are getting done, subbed basically everything that we did there out. I think I had my guys there for 4 days, maybe 4 or 5 days, 2 guys, kind of doing the trash out initially and doing some finish work, whatever. Those are the same numbers, except this one took me 4 weeks. Yeah. And of which, maybe I was there for 4 days, right? And the other one took a year and a half.
Well, there you go.
So it's very important to calculate your actual time that you're going to be spending on that project, not just the numbers of where you think you'll end up being. You know?
Because typically the numbers where you think you end up being, maybe right, maybe wrong, but your time, you miss on that, where you think, wow, this is going to be easy. That's probably not going to be that easy unless you've done it. It's in your backyard. You're doing a flip, right? That you've done it 100 times. But you look at an initial deal and you underwrite it. You're like, wow, look, $30,000 a year in cash flow. This is great. Yes, but it's 5 hours away, and it typically is a little bit off, and I don't think people weigh the time value enough.
So when you're talking about time, I actually remember a study or series of studies that I read, and it was when they asked college students how long it would take to complete an assignment, they gave the time they thought they would complete it in best case scenario, because what happens is people don't anticipate things coming up or having to redo or errors or mistakes or, getting sidetracked or taking a little bit longer. So what happened is we as people are ingrained to think of, I can do this task in an hour, but that's if I don't get a phone call during that. That's if I don't, decide to check Instagram for 5 minutes. That's if I don't mess something up. That's if I don't have any typos. It's if everything went 100% according to plan, it would take an hour. And in my head, I think it'll take an hour. Realistically, it takes an hour and a half, or it takes 2 hours, or it takes, a week because you actually needed another piece of information. Yep. And when I read that, I was like, okay, that makes a ton of sense. Hasn't changed anything. I mean, I'm way off on my expectations. But if you know that going into it, at least you're like, okay, if I think it's going to take 2 months and it ends up probably taking 3, that's okay. But if you think it's going to take 2, and it has to take 2 and your deal only works, like if you have a flip with carrying costs and stuff like that, and it only works at 2 months, don't buy the deal.
Well, that's like a very good family friend, like a dad, like an uncle, best friend, whatever you want to consider. Double it. That's no matter what, you double it. Whatever you think double it is. That's his. And you're doing $15K in reno, double it. It's going to take you 2 months. It's going to take you 4. Yeah. He says it all the time. And rule of thumb, but it's so accurate. It's always more than you think. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. I mean, that's when the deal we're selling right now, I think I was talking to Anthony or texting me. He's like, when's the closing date? I was like, March. Oh no. You know what it was? I was talking to the broker selling it. He's like, yeah, I think it sells. I was like, do you think they'll extend? And he was like, no, I think they'll close in time. I was like, all right, so they're taking the extension. Yeah. He's like, why do you think that? I was like,
said that the other day.
They always take the extension. Yeah, I was like, it's always going to take
That's longer. Why it's in the document, for them to take it. No one gets it done early. It doesn't exist.
No one looks and goes, oh, we have an extension, but let's definitely get it done exactly on time. They're going to come close. Something's going to be wrong. They're going to have to extend. Maybe they close before the extension date. They're going to take the extension. And it's like, but that's because 3 years ago, I would not have thought that way. Because now I've seen it happen 40 times on our own deals and stuff we've sold and other stuff. It always takes longer.
Even the two, Megan and Anthony, who cold call and they're finding deals. I'm like, guys, just because you tell them you're going to close in 60 days, that means you're closing in 120 days. Nobody closes it just doesn't happen. It's not that you're not trying to. It just things happen. And it is what it is.
No, for sure. So you obviously said you're thinking about doing some new stuff, cash reserves, growing a little bit. You said all your stuff is in Allentown, right?
Yes, basically. I mean, aside from a couple, like that small one on the Jersey Shore, everything else is downtown.
Are you at all concerned about like having everything in one area? Are you looking to grow that out? Like, what is your thought process behind some of that stuff?
So, I'm a big proponent of being an expert in your market, right? So, I tell new investors this all the time. It's like, you're going to go and you buy a 5-unit here. Then in this city, you're going to buy a 10-unit. In this city, you're going to buy a 6-unit. And now you're going to have, 21 apartments, but they're going to be in 3 different cities, right?
Yeah.
You got to make relationships with the judges. If you're doing, this is if you're doing your own property management, your own, you're running the maintenance or you're doing renovations or whatever. You got to make relationships with, city inspectors. You got to make relationships with the judges when you're going to do the evictions, the girls at the offices at these places, when you pull permits, when you file evictions, real estate agents in those specific cities and areas, wholesalers in those areas. You got to make relationships with, other investors, property management company, whatever relationships you make in that one place, you got to make them now times 3, times 5, times 6, right? So I've been fortunate enough to have been able to scale in this one place. I think picking your market's important. I think you want to pick something that's going to be, at least over 100,000 people. I think you can scale pretty well in a municipality that size. But I think there's more security in being in one specific place than there is, on the flip side of that, where you're saying, are you nervous about, kind of having all your eggs in one basket? I think that's actually a benefit versus a detriment. I think that, I think if you're going to pick you guys are in Jacksonville, I know, right? So you guys are there and you're scaling up there and you're making all those relationships, I'm sure, there, right? You're making
to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not with, maybe not making personal relationships with judges and inspectors, but, you're creating a footprint there and there are benefits that go with that. That market in and out, right? Like you tell me a street in Allentown, say 300 block of this street. And I'll say, oh, that's a good one, but 400's crap, And there's a lot of value in having that knowledge, the intimate knowledge of a specific place. No, that's the way I think, at least.
So I like that. New investors throwing a dart at the map and just picking something. You have so many pitfalls. I'm a true believer in, as you grow and as you scale and as you build, you can do more just because you have a process in an area, you can build it out. But if you can know the 300 block is better than the 400, if you're that specific in a market you either like to go to, travel to, just feel the prices are right or whatever it is, you are a fine-tuned machine. You probably won't make nearly as many mistakes as, going on Craigslist, buying a deal or calling a broker off LoopNet or there's just so many things you can't. And the hardest part for me when I started buying stuff out of state was I was so fine-tuned in the market I was as a broker. I knew everything. I knew this owner. I could walk down the street and be like, oh, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, you knew everything about everything. So you couldn't get blindsided. If you're in an area you don't know and they change an ordinance or zoning and you're not know it, your property could be, commercially zoned today, residentially zoned tomorrow, and it's worthless. That very rarely is going to happen. But when the block by block, house by house, north, south, east, or west, you're dangerous to the good because you just know, like, I know I could buy a deal here, it's going to work. Here, I'm going to struggle because this has good subway access or a bus access. And not knowing that on paper the deal may make sense and you may go do it. And then you get into the weeds and you're like, what did I miss here? How did I miss this? And that happens. And being an expert is very important. At the same time, I tell people, if you get hell bent on a market and there's just not enough velocity or transactions, or you're trying to buy 50 units or larger and there's no 50 units in a market, you got to get off that market quickly. Because if your product doesn't exist there, or they don't trade frequently, you're wasting your time. So it's a delicate balance, but I err on knowing everything about everything, because you're just significantly smarter. You don't have to buy 10,000 units in 24 states.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be harder. It may be easier for you as an individual, but most people can resonate with, I'm going to master this area because I know that there's, 100 properties trade a year and I only want to buy 2 or 3 of them a year. Like, you have to buy 2% of the stock.
Right.
You can do that. Anybody can do that.
And I think my advice kind of goes, less to someone that's going to go and, scale to 10,000 units. I think, a lot of people that probably listen to your podcast and other podcasts as well, I mean, they're probably just trying to own, maybe they're trying to own 30 units or 20 units or 50 units, trying to buy, a supplemental income, passive income, something that'll, take them into retirement, whatever it may be. I think that is more advice geared towards them, not really maybe for like you guys. Obviously, you guys are going to be, looking for large deals, and it's different situations. So.
But even for us, I mean, we're very, very slow and hesitant to enter new markets. I mean, people will ask like, "Hey, you guys are still being in Jacksonville. Why don't you own anything in Orlando?" Because I don't know Orlando. Like, I don't know if this block is a good block or a bad block. I mean, and
nuances with each
place, and
like ordinances, whatever.
And I know Orlando decently well. My sister lives there. We grew up going to Disney basically every year as a kid. I've been down there probably more times than most people who don't own anything there. And it's still like, I don't know it a tenth as well as I know Jacksonville. And I know Jacksonville decently well in the grand scheme of things, but we rely very heavily on our teams down there who are born and raised based down there. It's not like I'm sitting there and I can, talk about the 300 block on this street. I get a good idea of whether this submarket is good or not, but I have to go see it. I have to go drive the neighborhood. Like you said, it is definitely less important than I think if you're going to go buy 20, 30, 50, 100 units for yourself. But even for us still, it's like, we've been looking at Indianapolis for how long? We haven't bought anything there because it's like, I have to make sure I understand this market and this submarket and this road and this block and this neighborhood nuances. And understand what's going on there. I can't know it from, okay, this market is great. Okay, a market is not enough information. A submarket isn't enough information. Like, you've got to know it further and understand it. And that stuff takes time, and it's going to take legwork and grunt work to get down there and feel it and take trips and understand. If it's not in your backyard, you've got to go there several times before you think about buying. And it definitely, even for us still, I don't think it gets enough credit in our space industry. Yeah, if you've got 20,000 units, maybe it's a little bit less important. I still think it's important.
You're probably paying someone to do that work for you.
Probably. Or, there's research available and data and stuff like that. But if you're in the couple thousand space, 10,000 space, I still think it's hugely important. I don't think you can just decide tomorrow to go buy a property in Dallas, Fort Worth, and you're going to buy a property within 2 months. You're probably overpaying or buying a bad property.
Depends on return, right? Like, I could buy anything anywhere if I don't care about my money, but I know what you're saying.
So I agree with what you're saying 100%. If you're going to be like individual smaller, it matters significantly more. But I think unless you're like Blackstone and you're buying a $6 billion student housing company in the UK, which they just did this week, it's still important to a certain degree. It's just, what is that degree?
Yep. Yeah. All right. So question for you guys. So in Jacksonville, right?
Sure.
Would you say that the quality, and I'm not saying quality of the property, I'm saying quality of the deal, right?
Right.
Quality of the deals that you're buying now in Jacksonville versus when you first entered the market are better or worse?
In what way? Because again, I know you said quality of the building, but how do you still define quality?
Like the deals, So
is it? But here's my point. Are you saying are you talking about returns? Are you talking about like? Yes. Are we more informed? Like, how do you define quality still?
Yeah, specifically returns. So like, are you getting, say that, building's worth $100,000 a unit, you're buying it for 85. now, or maybe you were buying for 85, now you're buying for 75, or it's cash flow on this, or your cash on cash returns greater.
Yeah.
Are you getting better deals now than you did when you first entered the market?
So I think that the easy answer is we're significantly more informed today, but what you used to buy for 50 a door is you're not going to ever buy it for 50 a door. You're going to pay 70 a door today, but you're buying it at 70 a door with eyes wide open, knowing what your expenses are going to be, and you're going to underwrite it better. So it's like, you know what? I'm not buying it at 70. I'm going to pass because it's really only worth 62. So I think that every deal we buy now in Jacksonville, we're significantly more educated just because we have 1,000 units. So I know how much electric bills are going to be. I know how much repairs and maintenance on a 1970s building that hasn't been renovated is going to cost. So I can underwrite it better to push my price if I really like the submarket, the building, the location. If I like all that, I can get significantly more accurate. If I don't like it that much, I'll scale down my price and say, listen, in 2009, this was a $30,000 a door building and it's shit. I'm not paying 82 right now. On the same side, I think just inevitably where we are in the market, you're going to have to push a little bit harder in certain areas to get what you want. But but also we're also known, we're going to buy the deal. We're going to close whether it's some challenges or not. So I think you do see some stuff that, other people might not see and or overpay. I mean, there was a deal that was sold last year that we underwrote it. We were $2 million below what they paid for it. And it was their first acquisition in Jacksonville. So you're like, okay, maybe we tried to steal it. And I do think that, I think it's a great deal, but I think that was their first acquisition. So they were able to push it a little bit further than we would have bought it for.
Yeah. Right. I think to give my take, I think we're buying the same quality of expected returns. We're definitely paying more per door, but I think what's changed is because cap rates have come down, what we expected to make on our early deals in Jacksonville, we've far exceeded. So I still think we're expecting to make very similar. However, the deal we buy today, if in 3 years or 5 years, do we make the same we made on the deals we've sold or are selling in Jacksonville? I don't know, but we far outperformed what we ever thought we were going to make because cap rates went from 6.25% to 5.25%. So I think that for what you will.
Yeah, we went into the deal looking, we're trying to make a 15. We hit a 30. We're going into the deals today still trying to hit a 15. We might not hit a 30.
Yeah.
But I do think that the returns that we project will be similar to what we used to project, but the market's just made those deals that much better.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
And do you think that your access to deals now that you have a nice footprint in that market has increased significantly?
100%.
Oh, absolutely. I tell people, if you really, really, really like a market, whether it's a Jacksonville, whether it's a Jersey Shore type or so, if you really like a market and you're okay with if you're okay buying something where you absolutely want to be, there is nothing wrong with overpaying to shake free deals. I'm not saying if it's worth 50 to pay 100, but if it's worth 50 and you really love everything about it and you're willing to take a little bit of a lower return and you really want to be in that market, your first acquisition, the dominoes will start to fall. 2, 3, 4 years later, you're going to see stuff that other people don't because you have a presence there. You have lending relationships, broker relationships. People know you're active. So if you really like something, don't overpay and lose money, but you can push the needle a little bit if you want to be there. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Yeah. I think part of it too is as you get more knowledgeable about a market, one, you're able to go through deals quicker. If it's worth 50 and somebody sends it to you for 100, you don't waste time. You just move on. Whereas like if it's your first deal, you're like, oh, if it's a off market deal that a broker sent you and they haven't sent to anybody else, air quotes, if you're just listening, you're going to spend time on that 100 a door and it might take you 3 days to realize this is worth 50. Broker sends it to me. I'm going to take 2 seconds and go, why are you even wasting my time? You're going to ruin our relationship, and they know not to send it. Yep. So eventually you get to the point where they don't even send the overpriced deal. They just send you the ones you work on, and you can go through them quicker, as well as people know, like you said, if people know you're actively in that space, they're going to come to you first or second or third instead of 20th. Like if I came across a 100-unit build in Allentown tomorrow, you are literally the first person I'm calling. I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling you and I'm saying, hey, tell me about this. And then if there's something we can work out together or I can give it to you, that's what's going to happen because you're the guy I know in that area. Maybe John knows other people, but I don't. So it's like there's the benefit of that. I personally do think, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't think I would ever want to have 400 units just in one area. I maybe.
How about 400 units in downtown Manhattan?
Maybe not. Not with the rent laws.
That's true. That's true. With the rent laws, maybe not anymore. 400 free market units in Manhattan.
Let me phrase it differently. And I know. I would actually have 400 units in a market, but I wouldn't want all my money necessarily tied up in that. I would have money in other things. So I would be okay with having 200, 400, 500, 50 units in one market, and that's all my real estate or a majority of it. I don't think I will ever have all my money tied up into one thing though, whether it's real estate, stocks, bonds.
I can get behind all my money in one thing.
I don't think
I can too. I mean, my risk tolerance for that's fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. I feel like if I live in Long Island, right? Let's just say I move to Montana and I could buy something in my backyard. I could easily get behind having all my eggs in one basket if I knew that market in and out, and I knew my bases were good, my purchase price was good, my rent was attractive, and I had my oh shit scenario. You know what? Worst case scenario, I'm here. I could live with it. I could definitely get behind all my eggs in one basket.
And the one company in Montana goes out of business.
I just use that as an arbitrary throw.
No, I know.
I'm going to Montana in a week.
And look, I think that's the beauty of it, right? It's, whatever you're comfortable with. And there's, pros and cons to both. I just know that for me, I would never, putting my head on a pillow at night with all my money into one thing in one area, I don't think I'd sleep nearly as comfortably as making less and having money spread out a little bit different.
Oh yeah, I'm on chips all in. I played baseball in college, and we'd have they play poker one night or on road trips or whatever. And first round, I'm all in. If I lose, I'm out. I didn't care.
Even look at the cards.
I was like, yeah, let's fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's go to a bar or something. I'm an all in type of guy.
Whatever. Awesome. So is there? I know you said you're thinking of doing some other stuff. What are you thinking of doing? Like, what's next for you guys?
I mean, not really. More of the same, really, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going in front of the board March 10th. We're going to get approvals for a 118 unit ground up in
awesome.
Nice.
Allentown, so it's in the city. Have a couple. I have another one that's going in front. It's an adaptive reuse of an old building. It's 39 awesome. Units.
What type of building was it?
It was originally built in 1920, I think 1919 or 1920 as a car showroom. So the building's awesome. It's 22,000 square feet. It's got an 11,000 square foot footprint. Mm-hmm. It used to have a third story, so it used to be 33,000 square feet. So there was a fire in the 1980s. They took the top story off, but they left the front facade of the building up 3 stories. So
that's cool.
That's different. Yeah, so we're going to be restoring the third floor, and putting in 39 units.
That's cool.
Construction of the building is awesome. It's all reinforced steel and concrete. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, so you got concrete floors, ceilings, everything. So, once we got it out, it would be just basically an entire concrete, open shell.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we bought that a couple years ago. I bought it for $800,000, and I think our construction on it's going to be probably maybe $2 million or so, maybe a little bit more, 2.2. So I'll be in for 3. Should be worth about 6.
I was going to say high level. That's
seems pretty really attractive.
Adaptive reuse for less than 100 a unit. That seems nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And it's opportunity zone, and I think we might be able to get historic tax.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. God damn it.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
and it's a backyard. You're never going to sell it, so that's a
it's like
tax,
a legacy.
That's a pay a little bit of taxes in the future if you're using opportunity zone money, and just that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm excited to see some photos of that when it's done.
Yeah, you'll see them.
Yeah, make sure you take a bunch while you're doing it too. I want to see it. But awesome. I think that's a phenomenal place to wrap up. Joe, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your story, giving us people a ton of insight. I think ton of people are going to get tremendous value from it. If people want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, see what you're doing, where and how can they do that?
My Instagram is @landlording101.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
We'll plug it down below. Definitely go check it out. Follow him. Check his stuff out. Really cool stuff. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.